The storm had been raging for 3 days when all of Commander Sarah Blake's navigation equipment failed simultaneously. No GPS, no radar, no radio contact with any other vessel. Just endless gray ocean in every direction, and a crew that was beginning to panic. But Sarah wasn't panicking, she was calculating. The USS Hampton was a 509-foot Arleigh Burke-class destroyer that represented the pinnacle of modern naval technology. Equipped with the most advanced radar systems, GPS navigation, and satellite communication equipment available, the ship was capable of pinpoint navigation anywhere on Earth's oceans. But on the fourth day of what should have been a routine 7-day transit from Pearl Harbor to San Diego, all of that advanced technology had become useless metal and circuitry. Which city in the world are you watching this video from today? Please subscribe and support us for more stories. Commander Sarah Blake stood on the bridge of her destroyer, watching sheets of rain lash against the reinforced windows while 30-foot waves crashed over the ship's bow. At 34 years old, Sarah had been commanding naval vessels for 8 years and had never faced a situation like this. Sarah was 5'7", with dark hair that she kept in a tight bun beneath her combination cap, and green eyes that seemed to constantly calculate distances and angles. She had earned a reputation throughout the Navy as one of the most skilled navigators of her generation, but that reputation had been built on her mastery of modern electronic navigation systems. Now those systems were gone, and Sarah was about to discover capabilities within herself that she hadn't known existed. The equipment failures had begun gradually during the second day of the storm. First, the GPS receivers had started providing inconsistent position fixes. Then, the satellite communication systems had lost signal completely. By the third day, even the ship's radar had stopped functioning properly. At first, Sarah's navigation team had assumed the problems were temporary effects of the severe weather. Storm systems could interfere with electronic equipment, and the massive lightning strikes they were experiencing could cause temporary disruptions. But as the storm entered its fourth day, it became clear that something more serious was happening. Every piece of electronic navigation equipment on the USS Hampton had failed completely. The ship's gyroscopic compass was spinning freely, unable to maintain a steady heading reference. The GPS displays showed nothing but error messages. Radio equipment produced only static. Even the backup navigation systems were completely non-functional. Lieutenant Commander Jackson, Sarah's executive officer, had spent 2 days trying to restore the navigation systems with no success. The ship's electronics technicians had worked around the clock, but they couldn't identify the cause of the failures or develop any effective repairs. The USS Hampton was effectively blind, sailing through one of the most violent storms in recent Pacific Ocean history with no way to determine position, course, or distance to land. But Sarah Blake had grown up in a family of sailors who understood navigation in ways that predated electronic systems by centuries. Sarah's grandfather had been a merchant marine captain who had learned celestial navigation during World War II. Her father had served on Navy vessels during the transition from traditional to electronic navigation methods. Both men had insisted that Sarah learn navigation techniques that most modern sailors considered obsolete. As a child, Sarah had spent summers on her grandfather's sailboat, learning to use a sextant, calculate sunlines, and determine position using only the stars and a chronometer. She had studied tide tables, ocean current charts, and weather pattern recognition with the same dedication that other children applied to video games. Sarah's family had treated these skills as a form of cultural heritage, knowledge that connected them to generations of sailors who had crossed the world's oceans, using nothing more than observation, calculation, and intuition. But Sarah had never imagined that these seemingly archaic skills would become the difference between life and death for her crew. On the morning of the fourth day, as the storm finally began to subside, Sarah made a decision that would either save her ship or doom it to wander the Pacific until fuel ran out. She ordered her crew to stop all attempts to repair the electronic navigation systems. Instead, she began implementing navigation techniques that hadn't been used regularly by military vessels in over 50 years. Sarah's first step was to establish the ship's approximate position using dead reckoning, calculating current location based on previously known position, course, speed, and time elapsed. But dead reckoning was only as accurate as the initial position data, and the USS Hampton had been sailing in storm conditions for 3 days with intermittent navigation fixes. Sarah's position estimates had significant uncertainty ranges that could place the ship anywhere within a 200 square mile area of ocean. To refine her position estimate, Sarah needed to use celestial navigation techniques that required clear skies and precise timing. As the storm clouds began to break on the fourth afternoon, Sarah retrieved her personal sextant from her quarters. The instrument was a family heirloom that had belonged to her grandfather, maintained in perfect working condition despite being over 70 years old. Sarah's crew watched with amazement as their commander began taking sun sights from the ship's bridge wing, using the sextant to measure the angle between the sun and the horizon with the same precision that their GPS systems had provided electronically. But celestial navigation required more than just measuring angles. Sarah needed accurate time references, mathematical calculations, and detailed knowledge of celestial mechanics that most modern naval officers had never studied. Sarah had brought her grandfather's navigation tables and almanacs, thick books filled with mathematical data that allowed navigators to convert celestial observations into geographical positions. She spent hours performing calculations by hand that modern computers completed in milliseconds. By the evening of the fourth day, Sarah had established the USS Hampton's position within 5 miles, accuracy that was remarkable for celestial navigation, but still left significant uncertainty about the ship's exact location. More challenging was determining the correct course to reach San Diego. Electronic navigation systems provided continuous position updates that allowed ships to maintain precise headings toward their destinations. Without those updates, Sarah had to plot a course based on estimated position, ocean currents, wind drift, and compass headings that she couldn't trust completely. Sarah's solution was to implement a navigation strategy that combined multiple traditional techniques to cross-check accuracy and minimize cumulative errors. She established a routine of taking celestial observations 4 times daily, at dawn, noon, dusk, and during the night when specific stars were visible. Each observation provided a position line that, when combined with other observations, created a position fix. Between celestial fixes, Sarah used dead reckoning based on compass headings, speed estimates, and careful observation of ocean conditions that could affect the ship's actual track through the water. Most remarkably, Sarah began using environmental navigation techniques that involved reading subtle signs in the ocean itself. She observed wave patterns, noting how swells from different storm systems created interference patterns that could indicate the direction to distant land masses. She studied cloud formations, looking for signs that might indicate the presence of islands or continental masses beyond the horizon. Sarah even monitored bird behavior, using her knowledge of seabird migration patterns and feeding habits to estimate the ship's position relative to land. These techniques required Sarah to synthesize information from dozens of sources and make calculations that pushed the limits of human navigation capability. On the 6th day of the voyage, Sarah faced her greatest challenge yet. Heavy cloud cover prevented celestial observations for over 18 hours, forcing her to rely entirely on dead reckoning and environmental signs. During this period, Sarah had to make critical course corrections based on her interpretation of ocean swells and her analysis of current patterns. A single mistake in judgment could send the USS Hampton hundreds of miles off course. Sarah's decision-making during this period demonstrated navigation instincts that went beyond technical knowledge. She seemed to sense the ship's position relative to invisible landmarks and make course corrections based on intuitive understanding of the ocean environment. On the 7th day, as the USS Hampton approached the California coast, Sarah's navigation accuracy became apparent. Her celestial fixes indicated that the ship was within 20 miles of its intended course, despite having traveled over 2,400 miles without electronic navigation aids. But Sarah's greatest test came during the final approach to San Diego Harbor. Navigating a large military vessel into port requires precise position information and careful coordination with harbor traffic control. Ships approaching San Diego typically rely on GPS guidance and radar navigation to avoid underwater obstacles and maintain safe separation from other vessels. Sarah had none of these advantages. She was approaching one of the world's busiest harbors with navigation techniques that predated modern shipping traffic by centuries. Sarah's solution was to use traditional piloting techniques that involved identifying specific landmarks and using them to determine the ship's position relative to known hazards and safe channels. She studied coastal charts that showed the locations of prominent buildings, radio towers, and geographical features that could be used as navigation references. She calculated bearing lines from multiple landmarks to triangulate the ship's position. Most impressively, Sarah used her knowledge of local tidal patterns and current flows to predict how the ship would be affected by environmental forces during the final approach. As the USS Hampton entered San Diego's outer harbor, Sarah's traditional navigation techniques guided the ship along a course that avoided all underwater obstacles and maintained safe separation from commercial traffic. Harbor pilots who boarded the ship for the final approach were amazed to discover that Sarah had navigated the USS Hampton across 2,400 miles of open ocean and brought it to within 200 meters of the optimal harbor approach point. The navigation logs from Sarah's voyage became the subject of intensive study by naval navigation specialists. Her achievement represented the most accurate long-distance dead-reckoning navigation accomplished by a modern military vessel. But perhaps more remarkable than Sarah's technical achievement was her ability to maintain crew confidence and morale during a situation that could have easily led to panic and disaster. For 7 days, 2,000 crew members had depended entirely on Sarah's navigation skills to bring them home safely. Her calm confidence and obvious competence had prevented the equipment failures from becoming a crisis that could have endangered lives. Sarah's success led to changes in naval navigation training programs. Her voyage demonstrated that traditional navigation skills remained relevant even in an age of advanced electronic systems. Military strategists realized that electronic warfare capabilities could potentially disable navigation systems on entire fleets, making traditional navigation skills a critical backup capability for naval commanders. Sarah's techniques were incorporated into advanced navigation training courses, and naval officers began studying celestial navigation and dead-reckoning methods that had been largely abandoned during the transition to electronic systems. But Sarah's achievement went beyond navigation techniques. She had demonstrated that individual expertise and traditional knowledge could overcome technological failures that would have defeated less skilled commanders. Her voyage proved that human navigation instincts, when properly developed and applied with technical knowledge, could match the accuracy of electronic systems even under the most challenging conditions. Today, Commander Sarah Blake continues to serve in the U.S. Navy, though her current assignment is classified. Her navigation achievement has become part of Naval Academy curriculum, and her techniques are studied by navigators around the world. The USS Hampton's 7-day voyage without electronic navigation has been recognized as one of the greatest navigation achievements in modern naval history. Sarah's success in bringing her ship and crew home safely demonstrated capabilities that most naval officers didn't know still existed. Sarah's story represents more than just exceptional navigation skills. It demonstrates the value of traditional knowledge and the importance of maintaining capabilities that don't depend on technology. In an increasingly electronic world, Sarah Blake proved that fundamental skills and human expertise remain irreplaceable. Her ability to read the ocean itself and use environmental signs for navigation showed that the most advanced computer systems are no substitute for deep understanding and practical experience. Sarah's achievement stands as proof that individual excellence can overcome systemic failures when knowledge, skill, and determination are combined with confidence in human capabilities that most people have forgotten exist. Her 2,400-mile voyage across the Pacific Ocean using techniques that were old when her grandfather learned them demonstrates that sometimes the most reliable technology is the human mind when it's properly trained and fearlessly applied. Commander Sarah Blake didn't just navigate her ship home. She proved that human potential, when fully developed and confidently applied, can accomplish things that seem impossible until someone with the right knowledge and unshakable determination demonstrates that they're just difficult.